Welcome to today's explainer. Let me ask you a question right out of the gate. Do you ever feel like you have absolutely too little time and way too much to do? We all face this, right? It's a universal problem. If your daily routine feels like being caught in a tornado of tasks, or like you're just endlessly running on a treadmill, working harder and harder but feeling like you're just spinning your wheels, well, you are exactly in the right place. Today, we're going to look at the ultimate data-backed solution to this exact problem. It's called the 80-20 rule, or the Pareto Principle, and I promise you it is going to completely change how you view your time, your work, and your energy. Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our quick roadmap for today. First, uncovering the Pareto Principle. Second, visualizing the vital few. Third, studying and working smarter. Fourth, engineering your fitness. And finally, debunking common 80-20 myths.
Section 1. Uncovering the Pareto Principle.
So, have you ever felt like you're putting in 100% of the effort, but you're only seeing a tiny fraction of the results? You're definitely not alone. Notice this simple ratio here, 80/20. This is the secret engine behind the Pareto Principle. Now, this concept actually dates all the way back to an Italian economist named Vilfredo Pareto in 1897. The whole idea was kind of forgotten, then rediscovered by a Harvard economist named George Ziff in 1949, and then eventually popularized in 1979 by the British author Richard Koch. So here is the formal definition. Roughly 80% of consequences or effects come from 20% of the causes. Now, I really want to emphasize something absolutely crucial here. This is not some rigid mathematical law where the numbers absolutely have to add up to 100. Actually, scratch that, sometimes it's 90-10, sometimes it's literally 95-5. It's simply a universal law of skewed distribution. It's really all about identifying the vital few versus the trivial many. To really wrap our heads around how this works, think about Pareto's original observations. The story goes that Pareto actually first noticed this rule right in his very own garden. He was looking around and realized that just 20% of his pea pods were producing a massive 80% of the peas. Fascinated by this, he applied the same logic to economics and discovered that at the time, 20% of the Italian population owned 80% of the land, the vital few driving the massive majority of the outcome. Now, what's really interesting about this is how strangely universal this skewed distribution is in our modern daily lives. I mean, think about it. You probably wear just 20% of the clothes in your wardrobe about 80% of the time, right? 80% of a town's traffic typically runs on just 20% of its roads. Even in language, out of the roughly 170,000 words in the English language, just about 3,000 of them make up 95% of our everyday speech. It is literally everywhere. Section 2. Visualizing the vital few. All right, so if this principle is everywhere, how do we actually use it? Well, to truly harness this power, we need to know how to spot the vital few in our own data, almost like having X-ray vision for efficiency. There's a clear method for building what's called a Pareto chart. Step 1, you categorize your data, taking all that chaotic information and putting it into organized groups. Step 2, you sort it in descending order from highest frequency to lowest. And step 3, you add a percentage access on the side. By organizing information this way, it instantly reveals exactly where you need to focus your effort. It's like a giant puzzle coming together. And this brilliantly illustrates the point. Imagine you're graphing out 1,000 hypothetical hotel guest complaints across 30 different categories. If you organize them this way, you immediately see that out of all 30 issues, fixing just the top 2 or 3 will completely eliminate the vast majority of negative feedback. So instead of trying to fix 30 things poorly, you just fix 3 things perfectly. It's a real game changer. Section 3. Studying and working smarter. So how can students and professionals stop spinning their wheels and start acting like absolute efficiency ninjas? Let's look at academics for a second. We all know the exhausting old method, trying to basically memorize 100% of the material, which just leads to total burnout. But the 80-20 method, it's realizing that professors, whether they actively know it or not, usually test the most important 20% of the material. By shifting focus to really understanding that core 20%, you can cut your study time in half while actually improving your grades. So here are the tactics to cut through the noise. You want to track exactly how long a professor talks about a topic. Focus only on what's discussed in class, and listen for those subtle verbal hints like this is a possible test question. But here's the secret. The hardest part of this strategy is simply the fear of eliminating things. You absolutely have to have the courage to ignore the trivial 80% so you can completely master the vital few.
So the crucial point is that this strategy scales massively, far beyond the classroom. The company Illinois Toolworks famously adopted the 80-20 rule back in the 1980s. By relentlessly focusing their resources on just their most profitable products and customers, they scaled their business from $300 million to a staggering $18 billion. No joke.
Section 4, engineering your fitness.
Now, what if you're someone who feels you simply don't have hours and hours to devote to fitness, but you still want elite, top-tier results? Well, as the saying goes, time in the gym is not an indicator of success. Sweating along to a 2-hour exercise DVD, doing jumping jacks in your living room, accidentally knocking over and breaking your lamps? Yeah, that is not the only way or even the best way to get fit. Moving just for the sake of burning calories is a wildly inefficient use of your precious time.
Let's move to how this builds a better workout. Think about the bloated, traditional 2-hour gym routine. The commute, the long static stretching, endless isolation lifts, super long rests, just chatting with people, versus the 80-20 ninja routine. 45 minutes total, you do it in a home garage, 0 commute, a quick dynamic warm-up, and hyper-focused barbell training. To pull this off, you kind of have to treat the whole workout as a timed interval. Drop the isolation movements, things like bicep curls and calf raises. Those are the trivial 80%. Instead, you focus heavily on just 3 or 4 major barbell lifts like the squat, deadlift, and bench press. The core philosophy here is that the only seconds that actually matter in the gym are when your body is under physical tension. Everything else is just noise. Cut the noise, and you can aim for half the time while getting twice the results.
Section 5, debunking common 80-20 myths.
Okay, while all this doing less to get more sounds absolutely incredible, there are for sure some dangerous misconceptions out there. Myth number 1. A lot of companies think 80-20 is just a ruthless excuse to cut products and fire customers. The reality? It is entirely about reallocating resources for profitable growth. It's not about hacking away at your business. It's about taking your resources and watering the plants that actually produce the most fruit. Often, the top 20% of your customers are producing over 150% of your profits. So you take resources from the bottom and you lavish them on the top. Oh, well, we completed an 80-20 project a few years ago. The reality is that 80-20 is not a one-and-done checkbox. It is an ingrained culture and a perpetual strategy of reinvention. As you grow, you have to adapt. It's basically a lens you constantly look through to fine-tune your gears, not a final destination that you just arrive at and stop. And then there's perhaps the biggest myth of all. I'm just way too busy to implement this right now. Listen closely to this one. If you feel too busy, you are exactly the person who needs this rule the absolute most. 80-20 doesn't take time to implement. It makes time. It eliminates the noise across the board so you can finally catch your breath. So here's a provocative question I want to leave you with today. Look at your to-do list for tomorrow. If an emergency happened and you could only work on 20% of those tasks, what would you choose? Seriously, what are the vital few actions that will actually move the needle for you? Stop spinning your wheels on the trivial many, find your 20%, and start transforming your life. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you in the next one.